How brave would you have to be to drive a 180 miles per hour car with no ABS, no traction control, and no electronic safety aids whatsoever? Because during the 1970s, that's exactly what some European manufacturers were building. Machines capable of reaching speeds that seemed impossible for the era. And what's even more impressive is that many of them were created long before the technologies we now consider essential even existed. 1972, the Tomaso Pantera GTS. At first glance, it looked like just another Italian supercar. But there was one problem. It was far wilder than anyone expected, because the Pantera wasn't built to be elegant. It wasn't built to be comfortable. It was built to be fast. And during the 1970s, it fulfilled that mission better than most of its rivals. From the very beginning, its design made its intentions clear. The low-slung body, the aggressive lines, and the wide stance made it look like a race car somehow licensed for the street. There was nothing subtle about it, and that's exactly why it attracted so much attention. But this is where the story becomes really interesting. Because although the design was Italian, its heart was something entirely different. Under the rear deck sat a massive 351 cubic inch Ford Cleveland V8, producing around 330 horsepower. An unusual combination for the time. Italian engineering, American power, and an explosive result. Thanks to that formula, the Pantera GTS could exceed 155 miles per hour, an astonishing figure for the early 1970s, and enough to make it one of the fastest cars in Europe. The Pantera also achieved something very few automobiles ever manage. It developed a personality all its own, because it wasn't like a Ferrari, it wasn't like a Lamborghini, and it certainly wasn't like a Porsche. It was something completely different, and perhaps that's why it's still so admired today. Today, the finest Tomaso Pantera GTS examples easily exceed $150,000, while the rarest and most desirable cars command significantly higher prices among collectors. 1973, Ferrari 365 GT4 BB. For years, Ferrari dominated the Grand Touring world. But by the early 1970s, the company realized something important. The future was going to be much faster, and the GT4 BB was Ferrari's answer. Because this car didn't simply represent a new generation of Ferrari, it represented a revolution. At first glance, it looked like it had arrived from another decade. The body was lower, wider, and far more aggressive than the Ferraris that came before it. Everything about it communicated speed, even while standing still. But this is where things become truly fascinating, because the initials BB stood for Berlinita Boxer, and although its engine wasn't technically a true boxer design, it marked a dramatic turning point for Ferrari. For the first time in a production Ferrari, the engine was mounted behind the driver, a configuration inspired directly by the world of racing, and that completely transformed the character of the car. Beneath the bodywork sat an incredible 4.4-liter flat 12 producing around 380 horsepower, an extraordinary figure for 1973. Thanks to that power plant, the 365 GT4 BB could reach approximately 186 miles per hour, a barrier that seemed almost unimaginable for most automobiles of the era. Today, the finest Ferrari 365 GT4 BB examples easily exceed $350,000, while the most exceptional cars command far higher prices at major international auctions. And, more than 50 years later, it remains one of the most important, fastest, and most influential Ferraris of the entire 1970s. 1974, Lamborghini Countach LP400. If you ask almost anyone today what the most iconic supercar of the 1970s was, there's a very good chance they'll mention this car. And that's no accident, because when the Countach appeared, it looked like a spaceship in a world full of ordinary automobiles. Nothing looked like it. Absolutely nothing. At first glance, it seemed to have arrived directly from the future. The impossibly low body, the sharp angular lines, and the outrageous proportions created a silhouette that still looks shocking today, even 50 years later. But this is where things become truly interesting, because the Countach didn't just revolutionize automotive design, it was also extraordinarily fast. Beneath the bodywork sat an incredible 3.9-liter V12 producing around 375 horsepower, a spectacular figure for 1974, and enough to propel the LP400 to a top speed approaching 186 miles per hour, a barrier reached by very few automobiles of the era, and it did so without electronic aids, no traction control, no ABS, just the car and the driver. That combination made every burst of acceleration feel equally thrilling and intimidating. But speed was only part of its appeal, because the Countach became a cultural phenomenon. It was the car millions of people hung on their bedroom walls, the automobile that defined the word supercar for an entire generation. And perhaps that's why it remains so admired today. Today, the finest Lamborghini Countach LP400 examples are worth well over $1 million, while the most original cars command even higher figures among collectors. And now, I want to know something. Of the cars we've seen so far, which one would you choose? The brutal Tomaso Pantera GTS? The sophisticated Ferrari 365 GT4 BB? Or the legendary Lamborghini Countach LP400? Let me know in the comments. 1974 Porsche 911 Turbo. Many of the cars on this list were fast, but few were as intimidating as this Porsche, because it wasn't just one of the fastest automobiles of the 1970s. It was also one of the hardest to master. And that combination turned it into a true legend. At first glance, it looked different from any other 911. The widened fenders, the massive rear spoiler, and its aggressive stance made it clear that this was no ordinary Porsche. It was something much more serious, much faster, and much more dangerous. But this is where things become truly fascinating, because the 930 was the first production Porsche equipped with a turbocharger, a technology that had previously been associated mainly with racing, and the result was spectacular. Under the rear deck sat a 3.0-liter flat six producing around 260 horsepower. The number may not sound extraordinary compared to some of the Italian V12s on this list, but the car's relatively light weight and the brutal power delivery of the turbocharger completely transformed the experience. When the turbo finally came on boost, the car felt like it had been launched forward, and that caught more than a few drivers by surprise. As a result, it could exceed 155 miles per hour, an impressive figure for the mid-1970s. Today, the finest Porsche 911 Turbo 930 examples easily exceed $200,000, while the most desirable versions command significantly higher prices. And more than 50 years later, it remains one of the fastest, most influential, and most feared automobiles Europe produced during the 1970s. 1971, Maserati Bora, before Ferrari popularized the mid-engine supercar, and before Lamborghini dominated the bedroom walls of millions of teenagers, Maserati was already building a machine capable of competing with the very best in the world. And that machine was the Bora, an automobile that combines something very difficult to achieve: extreme speed and refinement. Because most supercars of the 1970s were brutal, the Bora tried to be something more. The low-slung body, the sharp lines, and the elegant design penned by Giorgetto Giugiaro gave it a spectacular presence. It wasn't as aggressive as a Countach, nor as outrageous as some of its rivals. Its approach was different, and perhaps that's why it has aged so gracefully. Beneath that elegant bodywork sat a massive 4.7-liter V8, producing around 310 horsepower, enough to push the Bora beyond 168 miles per hour, making it one of the fastest automobiles in Europe. However, what truly set the Maserati apart was its ability to cover long distances. While some supercars constantly punished their drivers, the Bora offered an unusual level of comfort for the category. The interior was refined, the driving position was surprisingly comfortable, and the ride quality was far superior to most of its competitors. It was fast, but it was also a true grand touring car, and that combination proved extremely appealing. Today, the finest Maserati Bora examples easily exceed $250,000, while the most desirable versions command significantly higher prices. 1971, Iso Grifo Series II. Some manufacturers built fast cars, others built elegant cars. Iso decided to build both at the same time, and the result was one of the best-kept secrets of European performance during the 1970s. Because although it isn't nearly as famous today as Ferrari or Porsche, the Grifo was capable of looking many of them directly in the eye, and in some cases, even beating them. At first glance, it looked like a true Italian Grand Tourer. The long hood, the low body, and the lines designed by Giorgetto Giugiaro projected power even while the car was standing still. It didn't need massive wings. It didn't need outrageous styling. Its design was elegant, but also intimidating. And that combination was irresistible, because beneath that refined Italian bodywork lived an American heart. A massive 454 cubic inch Chevrolet Verf 8 in the most powerful versions. An engine capable of producing more than 400 horsepower. As a result, certain Grifo models could exceed 180 miles per hour, making them some of the fastest automobiles on the European continent. Production, however, was extremely limited, which has turned the Iso Grifo Series II into a genuine collector's rarity today. The finest examples now easily exceed $500,000, while the most exclusive versions command even higher prices. And now I want to know something. Of all the cars we've seen so far, which one impresses you the most? The revolutionary Porsche 911 Turbo, the refined Maserati Bora, or this incredibly rare Iso Grifo Series II? Let me know in the comments. 1971 Lamborghini Miura SV. Before the Countach. Before wedge-shaped supercars. Before Lamborghini redefined automotive design, there was the Miura. And for many people, it remains the most beautiful car the company has ever built. But what makes it even more impressive is that it was also one of the fastest. Because by the time the SV version arrived, the Miura was already a legend. And Lamborghini decided to take it even further. The flowing lines, the incredibly low body, and the famous eyelashes surrounding the headlights created a silhouette that still looks spectacular today. It didn't look like a machine designed by engineers. It looked like a sculpture created by artists. Beneath the bodywork sat an extraordinary 3.9-liter V12 producing around 385 horsepower, enough to propel the Miura beyond 180 miles per hour, making it one of the fastest automobiles in the world. And that was absolutely incredible for its time. The SV version also solved several of the issues that affected earlier Miura models, improving stability, handling, and overall high-speed behavior. The result was the ultimate Miura, the most refined version, and the most desirable. Today, the finest Lamborghini Miura SV examples easily exceed $3 million, while exceptional cars can reach even higher figures at international auctions. 1978 Aston Martin V8 Vantage. During the 1970s, most people associated speed with Italy, Ferrari, Lamborghini, Maserati. But the British had an answer ready, and it was far more intimidating than anyone expected, because the Aston Martin V8 Vantage didn't try to look like an exotic supercar. It didn't need to. Its mission was something different, to become one of the fastest automobiles in the world, and to do it with absolute style. At first glance, it looked elegant, even refined. The long body, the signature front grille, and the classic British Grand Touring proportions created an immediate sense of prestige. But beneath that sophisticated appearance lurked something far more aggressive. Under the hood was a massive 5.3-liter V8, producing around 390 horsepower, enough to push the car beyond 168 miles per hour, making it one of the fastest British automobiles ever built at the time. It could behave like a refined luxury Grand Tourer, comfortable, quiet. But one press of the accelerator revealed a machine capable of challenging many Italian supercars. And that was exactly what made this Aston Martin so special. It didn't need outrageous styling to attract attention. Its speed spoke for itself, and it spoke very loudly. Today, the finest Aston Martin V8 Vantage examples easily exceed $250,000, while the most desirable cars command significantly higher prices. And more than 40 years later, it remains one of the fastest, most elegant, and most respected automobiles Europe produced during the 1970s. 1976. Lotus Esprit S1. Some cars were fast, some cars were beautiful, and a few looked like they had arrived from the future. The Esprit belonged to the last category, because when it appeared in the mid-1970s, it looked like a car that shouldn't have existed. Its lines were so radical, so sharp, and so different from everything else on the road that it seemed more like a futuristic concept car than a production vehicle. But it was real, and it was ready to challenge some of Europe's biggest names. At first glance, the Esprit looked like a spaceship on wheels. The extremely low body, the flat surfaces, and the spectacular design created by Giorgetto Giugiaro formed an absolutely unforgettable silhouette. It was something completely different, and that was precisely its appeal. But this is where the story becomes truly interesting, because Lotus didn't have the massive V12 of a Lamborghini, nor the giant V8 of an Aston Martin. Beneath the body sat a 2.0-liter four-cylinder engine producing around 160 horsepower, a modest figure compared to some of the cars on this list. But the Esprit's incredibly low weight changed the entire equation. Thanks to that, it could exceed 137 miles per hour, an impressive speed for such a compact sports car, and enough to place it among the fastest and most advanced automobiles Britain was producing during that decade. Its appearances in films and popular media also helped turn it into one of the most recognizable cars of the 1970s. Today, the finest Lotus Esprit S1 examples easily exceed $80,000, while the most original cars continue to rise in value among collectors. And after looking at this entire list, it's clear that the 1970s were an extraordinary era for European speed, because it was a decade when manufacturers stopped asking whether they could build faster cars, and started asking just how much faster they could go. Now, I want to hear your opinion. Of all the cars we've seen today, which do you think was the fastest and most impressive European automobile of the 1970s? The Countach, the Miura SV, the Ferrari 365 GT4 BB, or one of the other monsters on this list? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this journey through the fastest European cars of the 1970s, don't miss the video appearing on your screen now, because there, we'll travel back one decade to discover the fastest European cars of the 1960s. See you in the next video.